I will be talking about this on my deathbed. My 3 DNFs of the year was I would actually steer people away from that book. Hey guys, it's Tiff and welcome back to my channel. You already know what today's video is, so I do not need to tell you twice. What is up? How are you? I love you and let's get right on into it. We are finally going to be tier ranking all the books I read in 2023. Now in 2023, I read a total of 59 books. It was my first full year of reading and I am very proud of myself for reading almost 60 books. Before we get into it, I want to say I'm not going to be going into too much detail about my full thoughts on every single book because I've already done monthly wrap-ups for the whole year of 2023 and I don't want to spend a literal hour or longer talking to you guys about every single book. This is going to be very basic, what my thoughts were, very simple and quick, if that makes sense. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. Okay, quickly, let's go through my tiers. At the top we have, I will be talking about this on my deathbed. These are gonna be like my 6-star reads, books that I genuinely love to the depths of my soul, into the literal bones of my body. Love them so much, will never stop talking about them. Then we have faves of the year. These are gonna be like my 5-star reads, some 4.5s, just books that genuinely were favorites from the year. We have not a fave, but recommend. These are simply gonna be books that maybe weren't my favorite, but I would still recommend them because they were good or I feel like it would cater specifically to a specific group of people. Next we have forgot I read. Very simply put, I just forgot that I read it. Not horrible, but also not great. These are books that weren't bad, but they just didn't hit for me, didn't really enjoy them. Not a book that I would really recommend to people because I just didn't like it. And then could have lived without. These are books that I genuinely just didn't like and wish I didn't spend the time reading. If I had DNFs on my list, they would go there. My 3 DNFs of the year was Normal People by Sally Rooney. I just genuinely did not like that book. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that because I have talked about it in other videos. Another one was, see, I don't even remember the title of the second one. On Earth We're Gorgeous. It was something like that. I don't know what it is. I'll put it on the screen. And then my last DNF was If I Never Met You by Mari McFarlane, I think it was. I just couldn't get into it. It wasn't good. I tried to listen to the audiobook and I just really was not vibing with it. So those are my only DNFs of the year, but I didn't put them on this like I said. So we're gonna get into the books that I did read in their entirety. I put them in order based on what I read first, starting with my very first book of 2023, which was City of Endless Night by Preston and Child. We're gonna be putting this in Could Have Lived Without. Genuinely, I just didn't like this book. It was in way too many people's POVs. One of the POVs I thought was unnecessary. It just didn't live up to what I thought it was gonna be based on the synopsis. I just really did not enjoy it. I would not recommend it to anyone. I would actually steer people away from that book. And then we have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is definitely a fave of the year. It's not quite something that I will talk about on my deathbed, but I really, really loved this book. I loved the story and just everything about it. It was so fun and I thoroughly enjoyed it. We have Murdered at 17 by Christine Conrad. I would say when I first read this, again, it was the beginning of my reading journey, so I rated it a 5-star when I read it. Looking back, I would probably give it a 4. I would say not a fave, but recommend. This was a book that was just so fun, but it's not necessarily a favorite. It's not something that holds a very high place in my heart, but it was really fun. I enjoyed it while it lasted, and I would definitely recommend it to people if you're wanting like a mystery thriller, but that's not gonna be super scary. And next we have Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I'm gonna have to put this in faves of the year. This is a book that I actually genuinely love. Like, I really love it. I cannot wait to continue the series because this is actually the only one I've read so far. I really need to read the rest, but it's not something that I feel like I just love to the depths of my bone. Like, this top column talking about on my deathbed is not going to be filled with very many books because genuinely those are just books that like you only get that feeling every once in a while. Okay, then we have Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. This one, I don't really know where to put it because I loved it, but I think I loved it a lot more when I first read it than I do looking back. I think I'm gonna have to put this in not a fave but recommend. Now listen. Again, I rated this 5 stars when I first read it, beginning of my reading journey, but same thing. Looking back, I'd probably give it like a 4.5. I really loved it. It was so good. It really pulled out emotions out of me that I feel like are hard to pull out of me in a book, but it was not necessarily a favorite that I think about frequently because I honestly don't think about it very often. Now we have Rush by Maya Banks. Again, not a fave, but would recommend. This is something I would recommend to people if you really love spice and you love smut. It was definitely the smuttiest book I think I have read to date, but I really enjoyed the plotline and the story. There was only one particular scene that I did not like, but other than that, I thought it was fun and and it was a good book. Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan, also not a fave, but recommend. There's probably gonna be a lot of books in this column, but I did really enjoy this book. But again, it's not a fave, doesn't hold a place in my heart, but I thought this book was really good. Their love story is very sweet. I definitely believe that they are absolute 100% soulmates. I would definitely recommend this to everyone, especially if you want to read like a book that's a little bit sad. That's a very good one. Then we have The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. I couldn't think of her name for a second. This is definitely a fave of the year. I really love this book. This is a 5-star read for me, and I cannot wait to read The Way I Am Now that came out a few months ago. This book I think everyone should read. I feel like the way she made this story go, it really can open your mind to things that you don't realize a person goes through internally when they've had this traumatic thing happen to them. It was so good. I literally loved every second of reading that book, and again, I would highly recommend. And then we have If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. I feel like this is gonna be kind of like an unpopular opinion, but I'm gonna put it in the not a fave but recommend. It was good. I enjoyed it, but it's not something that like, oh my god, I can't wait to read the book in his perspective, because honestly, I don't know if I will, but it was good and I enjoyed it. I cried. I didn't love it as much as I feel like a lot of people do love that book. I feel like I'm a little in the minority. Next we have Just a Little Hookup by Carly Phillips, I think is who it is. Honestly, forgot I read. This is a book that I actually got on my phone for like a couple bucks and read it on like Apple Books, I think is what it's called, in the car on like a mini little road trip. It was good. It was fun. I had a good time with it, but like I don't ever really remember that I read it until I see that I read it, and then I'm like, oh, that was a fun time, and then I forget that I read it all over again. Next up, we have The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. I would say this is not a fave, but recommend. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this. Like, I would definitely say this is like a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but it's just not a favorite of the year, but it was so good. The plot twist totally got me. Like, this is a mystery thriller where like I did not see the end coming. It completely got me and I was obsessed with it and I was eating it up. So good. Like, that is a book that I really enjoyed and would definitely recommend. And then we have The Lake by Natasha Preston. This is a fave of the year. I loved this. It's a YA mystery thriller. I just love her. She's an auto read author for me. I get scared very easily, and this was a book where it could give me the thrill without making me actually scared, if that makes sense. The ending of this book was crazy. I did not see it coming at all. It was so beautifully put together. It was literally a masterpiece, and I love it, and I will recommend it to people till the end of time, honestly. And then we have Twisted Love. This is definitely a fave of the year. Twisted Games, I will be talking about this on my deathbed. Twisted Hate, we're also gonna have to put in faves of the year. And Twisted Lies, honestly not a fave but recommend. Now let me go into all of these. This is a series. I read them all back to back. Twisted Love, really enjoyed it. It just really got me into the universe and I really enjoyed it. Twisted Games, best of the series. Absolutely loved it. Love Reese, love Bridget. Bridget is my favorite of all the Twisted girls. Genuinely, that book is so good. Like, everything about how that book was done is perfection. Twisted Hate, definitely a fave of the year. It's not something I'll talk about on my deathbed, but Josh from that book is my favorite men from the Twisted series. And then Twisted Lies, like, I still loved it, but it's just not a favorite of the year. Like, it was good, but it's my least favorite of the series. It didn't hit me the way the rest of the series did, if that makes sense. Next we have Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is definitely, we're gonna say faves of the year. It's not something that I think I will be talking about on my deathbed, but this is a 5-star read for me. Absolutely loved it. It is so good. It's so wholesome, so sweet, and it was just everything I needed at that point in time and more. Like, genuinely, if you haven't read it, you definitely need to. Next, we have By a Thread by Lucy Score. Now, if you are not new here, you know where this is going. I will be talking about this on my deathbed. Once I read this, this was my favorite book of the year. Now, this is still my 3rd favorite book that I read in 2023, which I did do a video talking about my top 23 books of 2023, and this is my 3rd favorite book of the whole year. There are 2 other books that I read, which we'll get to later, that kind of took its place, but I genuinely love this book. Like, it was just so good. Everything about it, the banter, the tension, the slow burn, the main characters, I just loved them. I loved them together. I loved them individually, and it was just so good. I'm trying not to like actually ramble about it, but it was just so good. Then we have Son of a Beach by Mia Sosa. This is her novella that came out last year. I pre-ordered it, read it the day it got there, read it in its entirety because it was like 100 pages or something. I will say I forgot that I read this, but I really did enjoy it. I love Mia Sosa's books. I love her writing style. The Worst Best Man and The Wedding Crasher by her are the books that got me into reading romance. They really helped me get into reading, period, and I just love her so much for that. So then we have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. good. This is definitely a book I will be talking about on my deathbed. I just loved everything about this book, the fake dating. I loved their relationship. I loved the interactions they had. Like everything about it was just so perfectly packaged and I just ate it up. It was so good. Then we have Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. This is not a fave, but I would still recommend it. I think it was fun, but it wasn't something that necessarily gave me 5-star feelings. It wasn't something that I necessarily want to ever reread, if that makes sense. Like it was good, but it wasn't that good, if you know what I'm saying. And then we have The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. This is a favorite of the year. This technically comes after Mr. Wrong Number. You don't have to read them both, but I would say you should because Mr. Wrong Number is still a good book, even though it wasn't a favorite. But The Love Wager, the couple in this book, the fake dating in this book, just literally the formula that Lynn Painter used for this book of how everything went down was so utterly perfect. And I loved the plot line. I loved the characters, everything. It was so good. Then we have Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire. Honestly, I kind of forgot that I read this, to be honest. Like, if I'm being honest, it was good and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then I ended up watching the movie with my husband, and let me say the movie is awful. It's god awful. Please don't watch it. It's really bad. It's nothing like the book. And I did really enjoy the book, okay? Now we have Flawless by Elsie Silver. Now let me preface by saying this, that now in 2024, I have read the second in the series, Heartless, and absolutely loved it. But this first one, I'm gonna have to say not horrible, but also not great. Now hear me out. I have described my feelings towards this book in other videos, but I just wanna say, like, I did not feel the connection between these two characters when reading this. I felt like the smut overtook the relationship completely. I felt like that was the only thing that was going on, and any sweet moments were always happening when something sexual was happening rather than it just happening because it happened, if that makes sense. And that really kind of threw me off of that. So not horrible, but not great. Moving on, we have The Summer I Turned Pretty. Okay, we're gonna say not a fave, but recommend, because I thought they were fun, quick, easy reads, but I also prefer the TV show. If I'm being honest, I prefer this show over the books. I still need to read the last one. Still recommend. Then we have Carry Me Through Christmas. I would also say I forgot that I read this, though I did really enjoy this book. Like when I read it, I was eating it up. I think I rated this like a 4.5 stars. Like it was really good. It was really good. I just forgot that I read it. So now we have Heavy as the Crown by Lindsay J. This is a book that I will be talking about on my deathbed. I will literally be telling all the dead people about this book. Okay, if there's a way to read books in the afterlife, this is one I'm going to be recommending to people, okay? This is my second favorite book of last year. It's so good. It's what got me into fantasy, and genuinely, I just think everyone needs to read it, and I cannot sit here and ramble about it because I will for like 5-10 minutes. We're not going to do that. Now we have You Will Be Mine by Natasha Preston. Now I know I just talked about The Lake, and I really, really loved that book. This one though, it was good. It was fun, but it's not horrible, also not great. I would not recommend it. If I'm gonna recommend a book by her, it's not gonna be that one. It just felt like it wasn't up to the standard of The Lake, in my opinion. So then we have The Serpent and Wings of Night. Honestly, I kind of forget that I read this. I really did enjoy it though. Like, it is a really good book and I would recommend this book to people, but that doesn't change the fact that I forgot that I read it most of the time, like if I'm being for real. But if you love fantasy or you want to get into fantasy and you really like vampires, I would definitely recommend this one. I do want to continue the series. There's a novella and then the second one, and I do want to continue it. I just haven't gotten to it yet because I forget that I read it. So that's that. It's Not Summer Without You, the second in The Summer I Turned Pretty. Again, not a fave, but recommend. Same with the first one. The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. Such a fun book. Very, very summery, but I also forgot that I read this. So, The Grimrose Girls by Laura Paul. This is not a fave, but recommend. Genuinely really enjoyed this. It's a duology. I read the first and second one essentially back to back, and it was really, really good. Like, I genuinely enjoyed it. There is one particular thing that really scared me about it, but it was fun, and I actually would highly recommend this book to people, especially if you like dark academia type books. Those are ones I would definitely recommend. Then we have Travis by Mia Sheridan. I would say not a fave, but recommend. So good. I loved this after reading Archer's Voice. I honestly preferred this one to Archer's Voice, and that might be crazy, but I actually really did. I thought it was so, so good. Travis definitely got his redemption, and I wholeheartedly believe him and what is her name? It's the way that I can't remember her name, but regardless, like, they were soulmates, and I wholeheartedly believe that, and I will go to the grave on that. It's the way that, like, you guys can't even see all the tears now. I'm sorry. We're gonna be scrolling through a little bit. I hope that doesn't bug you. Okay, next book, The Wicked Remain. I am gonna put this in faves of the year. I preferred this one to the second one. We already have a relationship with our main characters, and I thought that this book wrapped up the duology so good, and genuinely I really enjoyed it. Like, I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So next we have Indigo Ridge by Devoney Perry. Now, if you know me, you know where this is going. Okay, faves of the year. This is now my favorite series. I haven't finished it. I still need to read Sable Peak. It's the last one in the series. It came out end of last year, and I still need to read that one, but this started the obsession. This started the obsession with the Eden series. It just feels like home. They feel like my best friends. There's no other way for me to put it. The next book I read was Juniper Hill, which is the second in the series, and this is a book I will be talking about on my deathbed. I genuinely, wholeheartedly will never shut up about this book. This was my absolute #1 favorite book of 2023. I will not sit here and ramble to you about why, because I have already said it in other videos, but just know it's so good. Okay, going back down, we have Addicted to You by Kristen and Becca Ritchie. Ignore the fact that I'm literally having to scroll like this. Like, please ignore that. Okay, I will be talking about this on my deathbed. So good. Genuinely so good. Oh my god, it's just so good. Please, like, for the love of God, if you haven't read this, read it. And then after that, I read Ricochet, which is the second one. This is going in faves of the year. Not quite on the same level as the first one. This one was shorter, but it was still so good, and I just love them. I can't wait to continue this series and get more of these characters in this universe because it's just so good. Next, we have Garnet Flats by Devoney Perry. This is also a fave of the year. Honestly, just so good. Thoroughly enjoyed this story, the plot line. We're following Talia, our first girl of the Eden siblings, and Foster is kind of trying to get her back after they broke up years ago, and it's just so good. Like, literally the groveling this man does. Ugh, it was so good. Like, genuinely, it was so good. I don't know why I'm talking like that. Okay, stop. Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I love Miss Lucy Score. Not a fave, but recommend. I would say, I think I rated this either a 4 or 4.5 out of 5 stars. Really loved it. Man, I love Lucy Score's writing, but I wouldn't say it's a favorite of the year because I can't, like, do you see how many favorites of the year there are? Like, I can't put everything there, but it's really good. I haven't read a book by Lucy Score that I haven't absolutely loved, so just know that. The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I picked this cover because I love the new cartoon covers that are coming out, but where do I put this? We're gonna say not a fave, but recommend. Actually, no, we're putting this in faves of the year. I really loved that book. Like, oh my god, it was actually just so good. If you like sports romance, or maybe you've never read one and you want to try to read one, the hockey romance, it's so good. Like, this man, he's so selfless. Like, genuinely the definition of a selfless man right there. Okay, next we have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is also a favorite of the year. I really enjoyed this book. The relationship between the two of them is so utterly sweet and just perfect, and it's amazing, and I can't keep saying that more ways than that. It's just so good, and I can't wait to read the next one. Then we have Scarlet Princess by Robin D. Mall and Elle Madison. This is definitely not a fave, but recommend. This is a series that I actually, like, wholeheartedly love. It's a 5-star series for me. This book was just so good. It's a fantasy, but it's not too confusing. There's a very heavy plot of romance throughout the entire series, and it's just actually impeccable. And then I immediately read the next one, Tarnished Crown, which would definitely be a favorite of the year. It's so good. Oh my god. Give me an enemies to lovers fantasy, forced proximity. I mean, there is nothing better. There's nothing better than that. I mean, maybe there is, but, like, you know what I'm saying. Then The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is also a favorite of the year. Literally so good. Thoroughly enjoy this book so much. Like, it was so good. I can't wait to continue the series. Felt like such a cozy read. I feel like this is something I would 100% reread. That's how much I loved it. Then we have Crimson Kingdom, which is the third in the Lachlan Feuds series that has Scarlet Princess and Tarnished Crown. Also not a fave, but do recommend. Like, literally, I just love this series. Don't let the not a fave but recommend category, like, throw you off the series, because I would highly recommend it to everyone. It's so good, especially beginners in fantasy, especially. Okay, then we have The Haunting by Natasha Preston. Not horrible, but also not great. This is her new release of this year, and I enjoyed it, and I thought it was fun, but again, I didn't think it was as good as The Lake, in my opinion. Now, maybe that's because The Lake is the first book I read by her, and it just made me really love that book more, but it just, nothing shocked me about it. I guess the ending, I guess who the killer was, like, it just didn't shock me, and I need a mystery thriller to shock me. Next, we have One of Us is Dead Bloodshed by Geneva Rose. I would say I kind of not horrible, but also not great. Again, this book just did not shock me. It was fun and I really had a good time reading it. Like, I thought that it was a very enjoyable book. It was a fun ride, but it just didn't shock me. It didn't put me on my toes. It also went into it thinking it was going to be more of a thriller, but it was more of just a mystery. There wasn't very much thrilling about it, so that also probably threw me off a little. I would still recommend it, just maybe not as much as the ones in the not fave, but recommend. Then we have The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Also not horrible, but also not great. I just, again, was not shocked. I mean, I'm sorry I keep saying that. I kept hearing that this book had the craziest plot twist and that it like completely shocked people, through people, and that this book was amazing, and then I read it and I don't even know what the plot twist people were referring to is. I saw everything coming. I kind of guessed it all before it happened, so I don't know. I could go on about it forever and I'm not going to, okay? We have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is definitely, okay, this is gonna take me a minute to get it up there. All right, okay. I will be talking about this on my deathbed. Absolutely 6-star read. This is hyped up for a reason, and if you haven't read it, you absolutely need to. The relationship, the tension, the banter, the build-up, everything. It is so utterly amazing. Oh my god. Oh my god. We have October Kiss by Kristen Etheridge. This honestly, like, forgot I read it. I'm a Hallmark movie like fanatic, and this is based off a Hallmark movie, and I have seen the movie, loved the movie, loved the book too. So good. Thoroughly enjoyed the story. I just kind of forget about it. Then we have Obsidian Throne, which is the last in the Lachlan feud series. I would definitely say this is not a fave, but recommend. Tarnished Crown was definitely my favorite of the series, but again, this whole series, it is a 5-star series for me. Now see, that does not make sense. That does not make sense that I have them in not a fave, but recommend. Okay, I know it's a little late, but we're literally gonna move all these. I don't know where I would put them reading order wise, but I'm actually gonna move the whole series to faves of the year because I actually really love this whole series. Like, sitting here now looking at that, it doesn't feel right to have them in not a fave, but recommend. Sorry for the confusion. Moving along, The Holiday Switch by Tiff Marcello. Not a fave, but recommend. It was a cute little Christmassy romance, but it wasn't anything special, and I also wish there was a little bit more romance because I felt like for the first like 50% of it, it was more focused around the main female character rather than the romance, but it was still good and I enjoyed it. We have Holiday Romance. Okay, I would definitely say, like, for a Christmas romance, this was a fave of the year. So good. I literally ate this story up. It was so good. And the same thing with The Christmas Fix by Lucy Score. Fave of the year. So good. Loved the story, loved the main characters, loved the plot, just everything about it. It was so good. It was so good. Moving on, we have Jasper Val by Devney Perry. Again, a fave of the year. I love this series. It again feels like home, feels like my best friends, and I genuinely really loved that book so much. So much. Then we have ACOTAR. Okay, fave of the year. So good. It took me a really long time to get into this book. This was my 3rd time trying to read it, and I finally got through it, and man, oh man, am I glad that I did. This is your sign that, like, if you haven't read the series, to start it. I would not recommend it as a beginner fantasy series, but if you're already a fantasy reader and you haven't read it, please do. It's so good. And that leads us into Asimov. This is a book that I will talk about on my deathbed. It's definitely my favorite of the series from what I've read so far. I've read the first 3, and this book was just a ride, and it was the best ride possible. It was so good. I'll never stop thinking about this book and the way it went down, and just is so good. And the last book I read this year was The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. This is the Barnes & Noble and Amazon book of 2023, so the expectations were high, okay? It was the book that my sister's wife, Maria, chose for me, her, and my other sister, Tamiko's book club. We decided to start one in December, and this was the book she chose, because obviously if it's the Barnes & Noble and Amazon book of the year, it's gotta be good, right? Wrong. Okay, so could have lived without. I genuinely dislike this book so much. I think I gave this like a 2-star. Honestly, maybe probably would give it a 1-star. I just did not like it. You go in so many different people's perspective. You don't know whose perspective you're in when the chapter starts until you really get into the chapter, because it doesn't tell you whose perspective we're in. The setup of it was just really bad in my opinion, and I didn't enjoy the plot or the story or the characters or anything. Like, I just genuinely didn't like it, and I would have 100% DNF this book book if I wasn't reading it in the book club with my sister and my other sister's wife, because I disliked, I mean, we all three did not really like it at all. So I would not recommend anyone to read it, if I'm being quite honest. A little overview at the bottom, and it could have lived without. We only have 2 books. That's honestly really good. But I do want to like say again, reminder, like 2023 was my first full year of reading. I was still very new to being a reader. So of course I'm going to have a lot of books that I loved because I am still really learning my taste and I'm getting more picky as time goes on. So that's why there's not many down there. The end of this year, we might have a lot down there. Who knows? I mean, I'm very, very glad that all the books I ended up reading for the most part are books that I really, really loved. We have 5 books in not horrible, but also not great. We have a chunk in the forgot I read. We have a good chunk in the not a fave, but recommend. So, you know, from here on up, I would totally recommend. We have a lot in the faves of the year because I genuinely just have so many books that like I read this year that I would definitely say are some of my favorite books I read this year. This is the biggest section, okay? You're probably like, you can't have that many favorite books, but like I can, okay? This is my reading experience. So I'm gonna say they're my favorites of the year. And then obviously the top, 8 books are books that I will talk about on my deathbed, that they were just that good. So yeah, that is my ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are not already, because we have a lot of fun over here and we want you to join the fun. You already know the spiel. With that being said, I love you guys so, so much, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. Okay, that's enough. Now out of those, what? So kind, before, I feel like I need to be sitting with this somewhere else. Very top, we will, then we have us, but it was, this is a book, oh, that doesn't go there. Where do I put this? This is also not a fave, but, ooh, I don't know. We need to hurry up. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Oh, wait, Jake, there's not that many left. Okay.